Frank Watson here with Tom Probasco, who has something to say. Tom, go ahead and say it.
Okay, Frank. Well, today I was thinking about, um, at least in these parts, there's some snow on the ground. I don't know. You got snow up your way, Frank?
We sure do, Tom.
Okay. Well, that prompted me to think about particular poems on today's Something to Say. Um, these chapbooks, the Something to Say, poems of this very life.
Uh,
And this is still chapbook number one. Now, I remember when you were talking to me about these chapbooks, Frank, you said, chronological order is not a bad way to go.
yeah.
And so that's basically what I did. They're not in strict chronological order, but that they are roughly they're in chronological order, roughly so. So looking out there at the snow this morning, you never know what's going to trigger an old memory. So these
Yeah.
go back, the ones I'm going to read now go back to when I was living uh, in Springfield, Ohio, which has been in the news and not in a good way in recent months. But I
I'm
did live
not,
there.
I don't know how that's so, but
Oh, well, that's where they said that that's where Trump and Vance said they were eating that these, I don't know, were they Haitian immigrants? Which is totally not true. It didn't happen. But they were eating cats and dogs. Uh,
oh, okay.
anyway, that was one, if you've heard of that business.
I
Uh,
vaguely heard about it. Tom, I am doing my absolute best to avoid hearing about
I
politics.
know. Well, this showed up prior to the election.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I was watching news or something and so there it is. And the fact that I lived there for a time, I was working at a job I didn't have real long. But my first wife and I lived in an apartment in Springfield.
Ah,
Came time to move, and that's when we left and came to, this was well, we actually got here in got here being Indianapolis, Indiana, in January of 78. But, um, and so this first one, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Before that move, but probably in that same month or the month prior, I went to see, I had an appointment and bad weather came up. I could have called and said I can't make it, but I didn't. And I got where I was going, I got back. But it prompted this poem called Driving in Bad Weather. Now, again, this was in the context of going through some uh, problems at the time. And so I launch out for this appointment. And later, not too long after that, why did I do that when I could have stayed home? And here's what showed up: driving in bad weather. Cold, cold wind blow hard. Snow rise and swirl and blast the windshield. I feel the car slide again. I don't have to go today. And the question forms and then shouts, why are you out in this kind of weather? Staring at the frozen road ahead, I blink twice and feel very foolish. But then an answer. This wind, ice, and snow are elements I think I know how to deal with. Driving in bad weather is something I do well. I take the risks easily, almost gladly.
yeah.
There were some things I wasn't dealing so well with at the time. but the wind, ice, and snow
Yeah,
that much down.
at least you know what it is, and yeah, I can relate to that.
I think
That's
most people at some time or another maybe can.
yeah. Speaking of which, uh, I I would like to extend a challenge to those who watch um, our videos to watch this video, and that is YouTube has comments section,
Oh yeah.
and if Tom's poetry or something I say or uh, something we talk about uh, causes you to feel the urge to share something that you've written or a particular thought, put it in the comments. We will check the comments. Uh,
Good.
I think it's a wonderful thing to write and to to take that perspective of the observer and to create something of our experience. Uh, there's been times that it was a way of I don't know exercising myself of pain. Uh, if if I could look at myself and put it into words, it helped me deal with it.
Well, and that reminds me of Barbara's son, um, Pat, the printmaker. Print,
Yes,
yeah. His last name, Patrick. I can't now.
O'Connor, Patrick
Oh,
M.
I was almost
O'Connor.
going to say O'Connor. And I thought it didn't sound like. Yeah, I've got some of his prints that you gave me, and then one I bought from somebody. But in any case, for a time, so he's on Facebook, and occasionally he'll post one of his recent prints. But for a time, and this has been a while back, he would say, "Art is therapy."
Yeah,
He he got to put it. You remember that?
yep.
Art is therapy.
Artist therapy.
Yeah. So that's what that reminded me of. But anyway, yeah.
Yes, and you know, Tom, as you know, uh, I'm having a kind of an ongoing spiritual growth, religious experience, kind of a thing in my life, and uh, I don't think I think I think that putting things into words is a form of creativity, and creativity is when we look at creating our whatever the universe is or whatever God is. And I look to the book of the Tao, for instance, that says the Tao that can be told is not the true Tao. Uh, and I look at the ancient Israelites who refused to even try to speak the name of God,
Yeah.
uh, because it was a limiting thing to something that can't be limited. But when we are creative, that is the closest that we can get to divinity, uh,
Yeah.
because it's that's what God or whatever the universe, however you want to say it, that's what's happening. You know, to what that's what we are all about.
Yeah. I think maybe I mentioned that reminds me. I think maybe I mentioned this on another episode here. Um, the song Poncho and Lefty.
Yeah,
The man who wrote that, well, it was popularized by Merle Haggard and let's see, who did he sing that with? Willie Nelson.
Yeah,
But it was Townes Van Zandt that wrote it.
yeah,
And I remember reading about him writing that song, and it was an interesting expression. I think I've said it before. He said, I just opened the window. He was in a hotel somewhere, kind of a crappy hotel. And I just opened the window and in came Pancho and Lefty. That's what you're saying this right now. It reminds me of that again. In touch with creation in your own
yes,
small way.
yes,
But that's what he said about that one.
yeah, yeah. The experience of bringing forth uh, a poem or a song, or it's like there's a mystical quality to it. I,
Yeah.
I've had songs just come through me.
You just write them down. I've had
Yeah,
that. Now, others I've chiseled away at for a while. It's kind of a different thing, but I have had those that just like open the window and it came. It just basically wrote down maybe a few, might do a little alteration here and there, but not much. So yeah, I that's it is that experience about as close.
and sometimes I wonder about the chiseling part of it, of you know on some of that, because it's like getting rid of the stuff
The
that
excess.
the excess. Yeah.
Yeah, get rid of any extraneous. Yeah, that's we've talked about that too, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, oh, well, related to that. So in this same time period, when I went to this appointment, it was just prior to us, my first wife and I, moving. And so the time came, we had packed up this little apartment and we had rented a truck that would be obtained the next day. So that engendered that evening as I was sitting up, we packed up, waiting for the morning to come and head out to Indianapolis. This one arrived. An early dig, working into the night, cleaning, packing, labeling the boxes. A very small place, this apartment, our first home together. But there's more here than we thought. Sort and select what to throw out, what to take. In the morning, we'll get the truck. Two new archaeologists, carefully, blindly digging into the future. And that we were.
Boy, thinking about that relationships. I had a first marriage too, and people who know Barbara cannot imagine me with anyone else.
Right.
I feel the same way about Julia and you.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, it's been
Tom and
decades.
Julia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were both married briefly, rather briefly the first time. And most people have not known us. There, there are some, but not many.
But
Yeah.
those being able to revisit those times, the words take you back to the feelings and the experience, and they take other people to their own experiences. So,
Right.
and that's a really interesting thing. I'm thinking, geez, I know it's like time travel.
Yeah.
You know, they
Yeah.
it's a carpet of words, a flying carpet of words. Uh,
Yeah. Well, the thing, and this doesn't over the so Kate and I were married like 3 years, and we had a daughter together. So that tied us. Um, that doesn't always happen. Some people just split up, and the kid never sees the dad or mother again. But in this case, that wasn't going to happen. So there were rough interactions for a time, and then Kate remarried. Legal stuff, financial stuff settled down. It would Financial stuff would rear its ugly head occasionally, but then eventually, that was over. Sarah reached a certain age, got married herself, and that was over. Court stuff, and so
yeah,
then we entered the period of kind of there wasn't any contact. I didn't have any contact to speak of uh, with Sarah's mom, my first wife. But then we entered this period because there were, I'm trying to think exactly how this happened. So I think Thanksgiving gatherings, Sarah said, would you mind if Kate and Steve came? And I said, no, not at all. And she'd ask me every year, and I'd say, Sarah, neither Julia or I care. As far as we're concerned, you never have to ask again. And I guess there were other gatherings too. Now that I think about it, where Julia and I were there, where Kate and Steve were, no problem. And then eventually it got ramped up. Kate contacted Julia and made an overture, about, hey, I go down. She goes down. What is that place you can gamble down south? She would go down there
French
to,
lick.
yeah, French Lick.
Yeah,
So that was the thing she did. She says, "How about if we surprise Sarah and we all go down there? Not me, just her and Julia
yeah.
and Sarah and I don't know who else maybe." And Julia took her up on it. And this and that we entered a period that I started calling reconciliation and remembrance because there really were things in that 3 year period that we were married. There were good memories because you know, uh, we got divorced, but I never divorced her family. Um, and she was one of six kids, but she was the only girl, so she had five brothers. Uh, I'm trying to think. Tom, uh, Chris, Kevin, and Jimmy that I got along with great. Especially there was a period of about 6 months where me and Kate and Jim just had the best time. And that ended when he was killed in an automobile accident.
Oh man.
And I always thought had a big impact on what transpired later. I don't know necessarily if she would ever agree about that. There were other things, of course, but um, but anyway, there were good memories in that time, and so we a couple of get-togethers we had. Everybody was well, one of her brothers and then later Tom died. He had a heart ailment, and then it turned out he had cancer, and he died. But Chris, the youngest, lived on, and we came. There was a gathering one summer. I don't think it was this past summer, maybe 23. But in any case, uh, we got together and just started talking about good things we remembered. So that can happen, and did in our case. So yeah, a time of reconciliation and remembrance. But anyway,
You know, that's a beautiful thing to just contemplate.
it's good for all. You
Yeah,
know,
I,
no
I
downside.
my experience with the ending of my first marriage and its ending were like a disaster.
Yeah.
Uh, and it um, the word broken comes to my mind. It
Right.
just really laid me down, um, and it took a while for it to catch up with me, but that's what it
Yeah.
was.
Well, I know what you mean because I, not long prior to getting married and then divorced from Kate, my own parents got divorced, which might have been in an odd way, the reason I got married.
Huh.
But that's a whole nother story. But I know what you mean. It was hard for years.
And it was a disaster, and it was exactly the disaster that I needed uh, to. There were lessons that I needed very much to learn. Looking back, I can see this,
Yeah.
and the hard times in my life have been some of the most productive times in my life in terms of my own coming to grips with who I am and who I am not, and learning to accept what is, including there are some people we're just supposed to be related to. My first wife, and God bless her, uh, I'm proud to say that she is doing very well, has done well, and she's having her good life. I don't talk to her. I the last time I spoke with her was at CJ, my oldest son's funeral. Uh,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but her youngest sister was close to my son CJ,
Yeah.
and when she lost her husband, I made her an offer to, she was alone, just alone, and I said, well, you know, uh, who's checking on you from your family? And she said, well, nobody. And I said, well, let's stay. You keep me informed of, of what your days are like, and just let's just touch bases every day. So every night, I wish her a good night, and maybe that night or maybe the next day she'll respond. And if she's got something going on, she tells me what's going on, and that way there's a kind of someone, if she doesn't respond, uh, then
Yeah.
I call, and
Find out.
and if if need be, I do have some of her family contact
Yeah.
information, and I would call them.
Yeah.
So everybody needs somebody
Yeah.
in their life that that will be present for them, just present,
Right.
and and uh, uh, and I'm sure she's there for me. If anything happens to me, she's going to wonder. She's going to be looking for answers. Uh,
Right.
but that's once in a while we'll talk, and occasionally visit. Uh, and that's she is a wonderful person, and uh, it's just a very comfortable thing, and and it's the sort of thing that happens sometimes in the disasters of our lives. There are things that spring out of them that are just good and decent and something to be cherished.
Yeah. Well, and yes, and I remember when you were doing what you started calling the front porch thing during the pandemic, or kind
Yeah,
of, she would show up on there. There'd be, I don't know, maybe four, maybe a dozen people show up. And I hadn't written these chapbooks yet, but I'd sent you some things I'd written. And you would read those. And then Aunt Lisa, CJ Caller, would, she had written some things, and that would show up on this
Yes,
front porch thing. I remember that. So that was her, she had that creative bent to writing. Well, and then I did see her. I don't remember if she play an instrument. I can't remember. She showed up a time or two at Sycamore
she is.
Preserve.
She inherited from her second husband several guitars that were just too much for her to play.
Hmm.
And so we talked, and uh, we visited, and I could tell that she loves music
Yeah,
deeply. I mean, she has a passion that CJ had, and I said,
yeah,
you need to get a ukulele, something that your small hands can play, and she
the
did.
you.
And
Yeah,
she went
that's
on,
right.
and
I remember that now. The ukulele.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
they got popular for people to learn on there for a
yeah.
time.
And she also, I believe, got a mandolin, um, but she has really taken to all of that. She has performed. She's a member of one band, two bands. I know she runs sound, uh, and she does uh, um, open mics. I mean, she runs them, and um karaoke.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Is
she
she still in Bloomington? She was for a time. Is she still
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah, that now there's a community where you don't have to put your hand in the air too far for you're going to find something like
Yeah,
that going on, which is, there was a time I thought we were going to live in Bloomington. That was part of the reason because I knew, the music
yeah,
community pretty good.
yes. And uh, that's interesting. There's different places have different characters and different spirits about them.
Hmm.
Uh, I still don't know exactly what Muncie has to hold
Yeah.
for us, and maybe I have to be more specific because the only reason I go into Muncie is if we're going out to eat someplace
Hmm.
uh, or going to a doctor or
Right.
and our neighborhood on the other hand is a very pleasant um, place to be. I love the Near East Side. I was committed to the Near East Side.
Right. Community activist, musician, so many things.
Yeah, uh, and while I was there, I loved it. And when I left, I loved uh, uh, the Castleton area. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And looking back on the now on the Near East Side, uh, I would not want to go back. I'm happy where I'm at. I I
Yeah.
I did. I love it. I still love it. And that wonderful bridge that lived that
Oh, yeah. The
right
Walkover
across,
Bridge. Yes.
beautiful bridge,
Right.
Spades Park Spandrel Bridge.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Historic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right, crossing over Pogues Run at the
Yes.
corner of Steel and Brookside Avenue and Brookside Parkway.
Yeah. Right near the Spades Park Library, where I worked for the first almost 3 years of my library career. And oddly enough, that was your library, but I never met you.
That's because I was always trying to hustle and make a buck
Yeah.
and
Well, and then
or play
years
music.
when some years later, several years later, when Kathy Hellman became manager, then you did, well, and that part of that was you did by then you had entered the era where you did the Benjamin Franklin,
Yes.
you know, character. And I think you actually did an event there uh,
I think she was
and
the
you did
first
some
one. I
others.
think she was the first one to hire us.
Yeah, probably. Oh, yeah, because I remember you called me at some, it was early days. You were trying to figure out, money and different things. And I think I put you in touch with I had no idea. So I put you in touch with a person who she was a programming person. This was years ago. But I remember that I did that and, then you went from there. But yeah, but that was, yeah, so that was a different time. So, and I would, because I hadn't met you in any other context, if you did come in there, I wouldn't have known you or Barbara. I'll bet you Barbara was probably in
Oh,
there.
Barbara,
So,
yeah,
so I'd see
she
her,
was
but I
like,
had no connection, so I didn't know.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, anyway,
That's a beautiful library, though.
there's one of remaining two Carnegie. So it's historic. It's on some register, and they rehabbed it. Really, just I got there in '92, and probably a couple, 3 years before that, they'd gotten a big grant to refurbish it as a Carnegie.
I
So yeah, it was a beautiful building. Had a nice auditorium upstairs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I grieve the loss of every Carnegie
Oh,
that
I'll tell you.
that
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
where I grew up in Xenia, it was a Carnegie that I went to as a kid, and uh, partly due to the tornado that went through there in '74, although it didn't destroy that building, but it changed so much. So when the library came back, it came back as a new building. Uh, there was something that was going to happen to the old Carnegie thing, and but right now it still sits empty because it's launch uh, hard to launch anything, businesses, nonprofit, whatever it is. So, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I think those libraries are one of the best examples of the responsible use of wealth.
Yeah, yeah, Carnegie. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, he
He
definitely,
was a tough old man
yeah,
and a tough business. And when it was all said and done, he did something really, really
he left a legacy.
he
Yeah,
did.
that's for sure.
And when I look at the world today, I, a lot of the problems that we face have to do with the lack of education, with the
Yeah,
lack of knowledge uh, in the populace, in the general population. And
yeah, increasingly
it's
so.
not just the low income people, not
It's
by
not.
any means. It's not just the low income people.
Oh, no, no, no,
Uh,
God, no.
it is
Ignorance doesn't it doesn't discriminate. Yeah,
the extent to which we all are interdependent
yeah,
is something that has has to be responsibly taught.
yeah.
And
Your
I
place in the world, civics. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, remember, you spoke of, we're talking about ignorance. Uh, so in A Christmas Carol, Dickens' Christmas Carol, um, the ghost of Christmas, not past, it was present or past, I can't remember, but he was being exposed to three spirits. One of them had these two children, bedraggled children, beneath his robe. And I won't be able to quote this directly, but I've never forgotten it. He said, "Oh, Spirit, what are those children?" And the ghost of Christmas, past or present one, says, not the future because he didn't speak, said, one is the girl is want. The boy is ignorance. Beware them both and all of their degree, but most of all, beware this boy, ignorance. For on his brow is written something or other, doom. So that was something I've, never, sure want. He said, beware them both and all in their degree, but most of all, beware this boy.
right?
That was a prophetic warning. It's reared its ugly head throughout history and it's doing it again. Never
Yes,
stopped.
and there is in this country a spirit of anti-intellectualism, and
Yeah.
it it's destructive,
Oh, corrosive, destructive.
corrosive. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and there, I think that part of that is the focus on business. Business has become the new religion among many, uh, and part of it is because uh, I think that a certain kind of siloed intellectualism has excluded too many people.
We don't know what goods, we don't know. uh, People trust things that are untrustworthy.
Yeah.
One time I said something to you about this back in the era of Walter Cronkite. Uh, it wasn't that he had so much in-depth, yes, reporting, but it was accurate. He reported in good faith, and everybody got the same. I mean, there were others, Brinkley and Hunt and Brinkley, there were others, and all the wild baloney was relegated to the grocery store. You'd go through the line and there'd be, Elvis still alive on this, and people bought it. They liked it. They either believed it or just enjoyed it as, but that's where it stayed. It didn't become, social media that now,
Social media.
that results in those silos you just spoke of.
Yeah.
And along those lines, this is another one from this. I'm about through this uh, number one, I think, unless I find more in here. I didn't know I put this many in here. Um, just what you said. Uh, this was in this was before the era I just wrote about. I was at Ohio University, which I think I was there about the same time as Patrick O'Connor, we discovered when
Yeah.
he was there. And so this would have been about 70. I don't have a date on this. Let's say it was 75, 6, something like that. But I think this will resonate with you with what you're saying. The title of it that I gave it was Easy to Be Very Worried, Easy Not to Care. And it goes like this. Last night I told myself I'd pick up a paper today. Now that dates it. I even wrote myself a note. Forgot to anyway. But I've been thinking about oil on the oceans and what we do to the air. And it's easy to be very worried. And it's easy not to care. But I've heard of another big confrontation. When did the fighting start? And what's the latest on the economy, on medicine and art? What was in the paper today about poverty and crime, about the rich and the government? And I wonder, How much time? It's easy to be very worried. Easy or crises everywhere. Easy to be very worried. Easy not to care. And that's what I wrote as a 20 something about that time.
That really brings some things home. I think that one of the things that happens is that people get overwhelmed by the uh, amount of information coming at them uh, from various media, including particularly the social media, and and we don't really have uh, we have not developed trusted sources, or people have trusted sources that are basically untrustworthy.
Now
Uh,
or they don't even know about them.
yeah.
If you're reading, as I do, The Progressive and Mother Jones, how many people read those? Um, again, that makes me think, and I found some things I'm going to use time to time. We talked about Pat and Chris
Hold on
Webb.
just a second.
Yeah,
Now, Mother Jones and what else was it?
the progressive
Mm-hmm.
publications that have been around, well, in the case of the progressive, over 100 years. Mother Jones, maybe 50 or 60, I'm not sure.
The thing that I see is that there is a real world here, and some people see it and write it from a liberal standpoint. Some
It's
people,
seen that way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's seen that way.
And some people from a conservative standpoint. And it's like they're in different camps and they're loyal to their mates, and nobody is really
Hang this up.
nobody is really having a conversation between the camps that has any meaningful substance to it to resolve things. And what's happening instead is that the camps have learned to seek wealth, to seek support, uh, to advance their ability to fight, and it's like uh, if they really solved anything, they wouldn't be able to raise money.
Well,
My view on
in
it,
this,
I
in
stand
this,
by.
yeah, in this case, these two publications are reader supported. They're not corporate media, but and they are, anybody that writes for them, their bio is in there. Some are in there regularly, some are in there occasionally, some they've hired, but they always tell you who they are. But they are constantly asking readers for money because they don't get corporate money.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything to anybody that's not looking. I've read both these publications. I got introduced to them, well, one of them when I was at Ohio University, just kind of following my nose through the library. Um, but that, you know, now it's back to the silos that you talk about. If you're in a certain silo, you're not looking. You're not looking for other sources of it. You're not comparing it to anything. So yeah, that's where we are, and it's hard to see us getting out of it anytime soon.
Well, there's a law, a physical law, uh, from my high school physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And I I think that if you push hard, you get a hard push back. And um, it's the network that we don't understand. It's how we are all connected. It's how the working person is connected to the corporate owner, not just the executive, but the owner. They might be one and the same, but uh, uh, how do we need each other? How do we relate to each other? And uh, for the for the working person, uh, like for union people, it's like the people that you work for are treated almost like an enemy sometimes. You know, they're trying to keep the workers down. Okay. And in and of itself, there's a truth there. But if you look at it from a network point of view, there wouldn't be a job to lobby for or to try to improve the working conditions if there was no work. We worry, people who have little wealth worry about the how rich the rich are, and they don't really look at, well, that's our rich people. Uh, who are we supporting? Who do we buy from? And what role do they play in the leadership of our country? And what role do the leadership of leadership in other places is played by the wealthy? You know, China and Russia, for instance, are supposedly communist countries, and supposedly they're all communism is all about the workers, except that there are very wealthy people in those countries that have a lot of insurance influence. And in the case of Mr. Putin, for instance, he seems to own a great deal of it too.
Yeah.
So it's not. Is that communism, or um, is that something else?
It doesn't have much to do with, if you look at definitions in a textbook, it doesn't look like that.
So
Yeah,
there's a uh, I worry about collusion between the the predatory rich. There's different kinds of rich people. Some are very predatory, uh, and don't are a world class wealth. But then you look at it, well, what if there are aliens? You know, maybe the world class wealthy people will have a role to play there, and what would that be? I think about those connections, and I've come to the conclusion that there's not really very much I know, but I'm interested. I'm listening. I'm watching, and I'm
yeah.
trying to learn.
That is interesting. The more you find that effect, the more you read and think you find out, the more you realize there's so much you don't know. You just,
And the problem there is when people get overwhelmed and they choose to stop thinking, but they want closure so badly that they cannot admit new information.
Mhm.
And I think to some extent that's what the churches have done with the closing of the canon, uh, and with saying, okay, this is God's word. Uh, this is the last word. Well, one of the churches that is still growing is the Latter-day Saints, and their beginning story is kind of sketchy in my point of view. I did a study on that in high school or in college religion class, uh, but they have an open canon. They have a prophetic group of leaders that are open to the leading, uh, direct guidance of God, new information. And I think that has contributed to their growth. I think it has made a big difference for them. And the churches that don't have that openness to new information, uh, I don't know. They are missing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same thing with science. Science is about theories explaining how things work
and testing,
and testing.
continuous testing.
And there's a lot of good work that goes into that.
Yeah.
But and I noticed this in the study of near-death experiences. Uh, Science is slowly changing their reaction to those who have had near-death experiences and developing a scientific study of the phenomena associated with that. Uh,
Yeah.
but to disregard something because you know it's not true.
Yeah, and that's not, so science proceeds on this is a thing that's hard for people to accept in some cases. It proceeds on the preponderance of evidence.
Yes,
Proofs, as they say, are, is for, you know, mathematical theorems.
and,
But
and it's
but science has to continually, if you're testing something, you set up the best experiment that you can, realizing you'll if you keep at it, you're going to see where you've introduced error. And so over time, the experiments that you set up will either confirm what you proposed, your hypothesis, or it will reveal itself to be
yeah,
not the case. And that's, and so, that's one thing, a criticism I heard of, speaking of writing, of science writing, is they're not good at being clear about the effect. Well, let's just say coffee, effect of coffee. That was one. They're not real good, or haven't been real good at being clear that this is what we know right now, but don't see it as a definitive conclusion, because these longitudinal studies that go on for years may confirm and it may disprove. And that happened with the effects of coffee, wine, lots of things. And people don't have a high tolerance. Many people don't have a high tolerance for that.
there and which brings up when you look at the effect of people acting on their ignorance. Uh, that's the cost we pay for failure to educate.
Yes. Ignorance. Most of all, beware this boy.
Yeah, that's
Well, and which brings me, and it's getting close to an hour here. I would like to read, well, and war is seen as, properly seen as a mass failure.
mm,
It makes me think of Pat Webb, and we spoke about his chapbooks and music, uh, but I'd like to get this one in before we wrap up today. because I've been listening to a thing that it never got out there as a album. It's called Terroresque, and I'm gonna be seeing Chris Webb tomorrow, and I'm gonna ask him more about this because apparently it was not produced in a studio like Pat had a couple of them, including Al Stone. This one might have been Steve Creech. Did you ever remember? Did you ever
Oh
meet
yeah,
him?
Steve Creech is a
It
recording engineer that masters.
well,
Last I heard, he had clients like in Nashville. So
he for some reason this Terrorist got produced in the. I mean, I've got a disc, the only one I know about it that Scott Millsop gave me, and I sent you that recently. Where those songs, it was a link. You click on it and it plays all
right.
the songs. That's exactly this disc. He must have copied it from that disc and sent it to me. Then I sent it to you and Chris. Uh, but it never. There's no packaging. I don't see any reference to it anywhere like his others that he did, Pat and Chris. But it seems like there's like dozen element. Well, some are songs, some are spoken word. And it's like it never got out there as a completed album. So I want to ask Chris what happened. But in any case, there is in the chat book, and I think read on Terresque on one of these readings is Pat read some, Chris Webb some. Chris read some. But this one Pat read, Kickapoo Longgrass. Now that was the name of one of his albums, but this is in a chat book. And speaking of ignorance and the results thereof, you'll hear why that's involved in this one. Kickapoo Longgrass. He comes and reads the tombstones. He touches the earth with the palms of his hands. The earth is his real mother. He knows this already. He knows his birth mother is a child herself who believes nothing is vital. She is wrong. His kind is almost extinct. This lean boy with gunfighter eyes and the walk of coyote, he will see gunfights. He will fight in the hardest battle of the 20th century and will need all his coyote skills to survive. It is called the National Cemetery, this place, near the south edge of what they call the Kickapoo Prairie, that we call the place of the long grass, a power place, a sacred place forever. Here they buried the dead from the greatest Western battle of the Civil War. Some of my people are here among them. I am called Medicine Dog. I am a shaman and am very old. I will instruct this strange fatherless boy born into this family of wasters who play at life. He will be my last one. I will teach him that which is called the straight way, without ceremony, without small magic. After all, the giant magic is all around us. After he has embraced the thunder, danced with the lightning, rode the tornado, he will have a clear way of seeing that few ever know. My long time is almost ended. I have seen many things. Soon I will cross over peacefully. I have already seen the black dog turning toward wars, toward me. The National Cemetery awaits the dead of other wars, and they will come. Safe from earth killers, safe from the plow, in a thin strip just inside the National Cemetery south fence and in the corner of the potter's field, untended by the gravekeepers, a remnant of the long grass survives. Like a band of tall green warriors, it awaits the day it will start to move back across the prairie and make an end to this exile of centuries, and that day will come. Kickapoo Longgrass by Pat Webb.
I remember when he wrote that. He was living in our house at 12th and Arsenal on the near east side of Indianapolis.
I thought you might recognize it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we've talked about it before.
yeah. It's interesting. I've come into contact with several people who have apprenticed as with pipe carriers or with native spiritual people,
Mhm.
and there's respect. Well, Tom, we're closing in.
All right.
It's been a real pleasure.
As always, for me too.
Folks, that Tom Probasco and Frank Watson here about once a week. These days we're posting on Thursdays, and Tom Probasco always comes up with something to say. And today, just like always, he said it, and I said something back.
That's right.
So look for us, and we're looking for you. Leave us leave us your thoughts. If you got a poem or a song or something, put it in the comments, and
Yeah.
we'll respond. And
Yeah.
thank you so much.